Okay, good news, I'm back. Bad news, attempting to record audio in its own channel fucked up. Audacity just stops recording sometimes, apparently, without telling you. But that's not necessarily such a terrible thing. I know what I was talking about. We only lost about a third of it, and the whole thing was very rambly and high concept, even for me. But what we can do now, I can basically cut up what I was talking about, re-record parts of it. This is basically forcing me to refine my own 40 minutes of talking. About 10 minutes of that was lost, and what I intend to do now is basically remember the things I was saying, repeat them again more succinctly, and yeah, just put this to some footage, and hopefully we get something that's of some interest to somebody. Alright, hello. I'm sorry it's been a while. Again, I'm always saying I'm back and then I'm not, but yeah, frankly, I wasn't feeling great tonight, and that's why I've decided to do a video. I've been waiting for the good time when I'd be feeling like it, but we haven't got there, and I just thought, on a whim, I saw Dark Souls. I played it on Xbox forever ago. I saw it on PC and thought, yeah, let's do that. That'll be fun. Something I can talk over, low stress, and yeah, here I am doing it. And as I started downloading this, I was just thinking in my own head, talking to myself as I do about what could be talked about while going through this game, and I actually found that quite exciting. There's a lot going on here, but I'm going to edit some stuff into this, but at the same time, it shouldn't be a stressful or demanding thing. It's, again, like Halo, I think this will be a pleasure. There's just a lot I can talk about. I don't intend to do the whole game, just as much as I feel like talking about it, basically just to prompt myself back into the swing of things. I'm sorry, I still have the real videos in mind, and I might do them very soon if the good mood I've got doing this sticks with me, but yeah, if you didn't know, this is Dark Souls. I skipped its very opening because that would just leave us overloaded with stuff for you to look at, and for me to explain and talk over the top of it would be a bit difficult. But from pretty much the opening cutscene, which we skipped onwards, it's all very much just at your own pace and very much make of it what you will, which is very good for this kind of video, I think. Yes, here we are, and the game is telling me what to do, but I know what I'm doing. We're just going to keep moving. You can see my guy here. I'm the hunter. There's some kind of strange monster in there. I made a kind of stock-looking guy. He's a zombie right now, so you can't see my face, but we'll get to that. I'll first note to myself, I'm going to do light editing on this. I need to show you my character from Dark Souls 2, which a lot of people seem to like. I would give myself the Norwood of power in this game, but it's not as cool. In Dark Souls 2, it's amazing, and I gave my guy that. I had to. It looks incredible. Do I have to fight a guy already? I don't remember how this is structured. Don't think so. Anyway, in my mind, I've basically got a few thoughts drafted on key subjects that just things that are of interest in this game that I would really like to talk about, and we'll get to them very shortly. First thing I'll raise to you, you might not have played the original, or you just might not know this is Dark Souls remastered, but it's not really a problem case or anything. As you can see, this looks pretty much fine. It's the textures and such, I think, were the most refined in the sense of tuned to all work together first time around. This time they kind of polished things up, but it didn't have all the original artists working together first time around, so some people might say that a touch of harmony was lost here, and I might even agree. But it's fine, I'm very happy playing this. There's a big scary monster, we'd better move. And yeah, I'm recording audio in a separate channel, so it doesn't matter if that was very loud. I can just tune it up and down and fix my own voice later. Isn't that nice? I'm learning. But yeah, this is still just early Dark Souls, and if you'll just bear with me for a moment, the stuff I really want to talk about we'll get to in the first real area of the game, I suppose, but here I can just show you how it works, and Just briefly go into some things here. This is a From game, you may know, but I don't know, most people don't care as much about From lore as I do. That just the first thing I'll say is that the way that this game, the first time I played it, a few parts of it really threw me where this game has a weird relationship with items where like you pick Hunter or Knight or whatever at the start and you think like, oh, is this like a Dungeons and Dragons game? I'm like locked into certain stuff, but no, it's just the stuff you find here and a few numbers on your man. And something that I think is really distinctly Japanese is that you're really encouraged to just break the absolute hell out of this game and make of it what you will. Like, you're really, the ideal way to play this game is to be completely comfortable with just turning what you've been doing on its head at the drop of a hat once something better comes along, which is actually something I kind of have to make myself do. I'm not like completely rigid in video games, but I am weird where like I will typically try to do the weird thing in any game that will let me, and I can be very obstinate about doing things one way, not because I feel like I have to, but because I basically make myself feel like I have to because I want to. I'm sorry, that's probably not the most interesting thing to go into, but just I'm very silly. Like, if I pick Hunter at the start of Dark Souls, I'm going to try to beat the whole goddamn game with a bow. I just find that entertaining. But I think the proper way to play this is, you know, the other big From thing is Armored Core, and they were always thinking very similarly between Kingsfield and their other kind of fantasy games which led into Dark Souls and Armored Core. They're thinking very similarly, where if you look at this, it's like, look, I have a modular man, I can take off pieces and build him up again, which is kind of like the logic of a robot, and you're very much meant to... Armored Core and Dark Souls are both games about basically collecting equipment and building up this modular core and swapping things on and off to overcome weird challenges kind of intuitively. That's not a really important point, it's just a thought that comes to my mind fairly often. How similarly the sensibilities of how they choose to do fantasy knight stuff arguably resembles the robot thing, and I think that being comfortable with that weird kind of shuffling around of your guy, I think that's a weird kind of Japanese thing in my mind. They're kind of natural power gamers, where like, they don't mod a lot of stuff, mostly just because they don't do too much on computers, but they have that kind of like mod brain where like, within established lines and conventions they will just like flip things out and do like really weird builds in RPGs and stuff, but at the same time it's not really like them to like actively go and like mod co-op into the game or something like white people did with Elden Ring. A thought that comes to my mind now, a friend who used to spend a lot of time in Second Life said that Americans made the coolest stuff in Second Life where they would just like break things, fight the logic of the game, and do stuff that seems like it shouldn't have been possible. But then the other people who were the best were the Japanese, who would like just have incredible craftsmanship and just ideas working within the lines. And do you understand me if I say that Dark Souls is a game which has incredible potential to be fucked around with within given lines? That's not a thought I had in mind when I was thinking about this before, but just trying to fill time while we're in the asylum, I've already got so many tangents in my head that I'm doing that thing where I just walk around in circles and make you listen to me. This is going to be just like Halo, I think. But here is the first thing I had in mind already. We could talk about it later, but the way people speak in this game... Also, this is just a very nicely staged scene with the light on this guy. I think that the way light reflects off of surfaces is perhaps a bit nicer in the original. Another note for myself before I upload this to try to look up a comparison image and flash that on screen now if I can. Good job if you remember that, Anthony. We'll see how that goes in editing. But now we have to talk to this guy, and I want you to just listen to how he speaks.
Oh, you. You're no hollow. Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I, we're both undead. Hear me out, will you?
Of course I'll hear you out.
Regrettably, I have failed in my mission. But perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family. Thou who art undead art chosen. And thine exodus from the undead asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know. Well, now you know. And I can die with hope in my heart. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. An Estus flask. An undead favorite. Oh, and this. Now I must bid farewell. I would hate to harm you after death. So go now, and thank you.
Alright, now... Sorry, I think you can actually see that guy die, but there's no real need to dwell on that. Oh, there he goes. Poor Roscoe. Now, sorry, the thought that was on my mind, it regards just the general tone and quality of the voice acting in this game. First, the most obvious point we can make is that, you know, just in terms of sheer quality, it's good. There's nothing too complex to that. The Japanese are very good at directing actors. They dodge the voice acting mafia, pick their own people, and just get stage actors and such who can speak like human beings. It works quite well. It's actually not difficult. I would actually say the cheaper you are with voice acting, there's a certain threshold below which you will probably get much better work. But anyway, sorry, what I was really getting at is kind of the quality of the writing and the delivery, where Oscar's kind of a strange sounding guy there. He sounds kind of like a guy who's half knocked out in a dream or something, and the things he says are extremely vague. There's like a vague... Sorry. Yeah, I haven't played this in a while, have I? Sorry, let me kill these spooky men. If I even can. There we go. Let me deal with this one other one, then I can tell you about the voice acting. And this was a quality we had in the very, very opening video as well, which is the prologue. You can just look that up yourself if you'd like to. Again, it's an English person and they're doing a very good job. Okay, now I've got this down. So yes, what interests me is this kind of very vague, dreamy quality to performance and writing, where Oscar alludes to a lot of things like his family have sayings, is he a noble or something, how well do people understand this curse, where the hell are we, how much does this world we live in make sense, how much of it is just expedience to construct video game levels and so on. This is very much a From thing recurring all through their work, which I think is comparable to some other things, which I'll get into, but yes, just for now, the thought I want you to have in your head is, this is very big, isn't it? It's very weird, they allude to a lot, but we don't really know how much is there, and the presentation and performances, all of that stuff is very nice, but... So let me deal with this guy, and then I can get some thoughts together. Some people might be saying I'm being very slow, indulgent, or lazy, but I know that some of you really like these videos I do for sheer volume, and for those of you who have been waiting and want there to be a lot of Anthony's stuff, well, my thinking, how I excuse my meandering is, okay, if you guys really like hearing me talk, well, this might take a while. I think I can take this guy on without too much fuss. That wasn't very good, Anthony. Let's not lock on for the minute. I think in Elden Ring the controls are slightly different. I did beat that game, I'm not totally helpless. but yeah, I know what I'm doing. Doesn't this guy look like a generic, ugly video game thing? He's Mr. Side of the graphics box. He could just about be from God of War. Especially the PlayStation 2 God of Wars, which I think are just hideous, but that's really its own subject as well. Maybe just to make the point, just to get into the habit of videos, Anthony, when you're editing this, why don't we put a God of War monster on to demonstrate why I hate that stuff? Anyway, what was I doing? Let's leave here. It's a very pretty game. I forgot how much I like this opening area with its like Mario 64 photograph mountain range all around us. Very pretty opening area. I don't remember if there's anything around here, but I do just want to loiter as well. But yeah, there's one more guy we'll talk to, and then I'll follow up on that point about voice acting and presentation. Did you see a little bird's nest back there? That's kind of important. But for the minute, I believe we just walk to the edge of this cliff. Here we go. Very pretty.
Only in the ancient
here's the voice acting lady for you.
That one day an undead shall be chosen. To leave the undead asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords. Lordran.
Okay, again I'm thinking of Mario 64 all of a sudden, that we get this like bird carrying us in and we get a view of the whole area. Never occurred to me before. Now here's Mr. Voice Acting, we have to talk to him. And yes, we have to go high-five this fireplace as well. I kind of want to completely meme on this thing and give myself dexterity to get really good at bows. I don't think they're particularly good, I just love messing around with them. And I love beating the game with gear that's not particularly good, as I said. We can look at that in a moment. Mr. Voice Actor, I need to talk to you.
Well, what do we have here? You must be a new arrival. Let me guess. Fate of the undead, right? Well, you're not the first. But there's no celebration here. You'd have done better to rot in the undead asylum. But too late now. Well, since you're here, let me help you out. There are, actually, 2 bells of awakening. One's up above in the undead church. The other is far, far below, in the ruins at the base of Blight Town. Ring them both, and something happens. Brilliant, right? Not much to go on, but I have a feeling that won't stop you. So, off you go. It is why you came, isn't it? To this accursed land of the undead?
Sorry, I was just messing around with my sword there.
Ah, your face. You're practically hollow.
So feel free to skip this if you feel like you've gotten the point.
Quite a bit.
Yes, where I was going is, I've been wondering lately about this quality of kind of abstraction in Japanese media, pop media especially, and the extent to which it's kind of a happy accident and the extent to which it's, you know, deliberate, if they're actually that good. There are a few things that really make me wonder. I have this kind of feeling that they've been playing us all along and are much smarter than they let on, at least in a few cases. I've been wondering, there are some very strong examples of this in media happening by accident in other places before the generation of guys making these games would have come of age and started making stuff. They would have seen them like I did much earlier on and been taking them in and be reacting to them at some point. There's an example I'll raise in one moment. Just let me show you my guy's face in a moment. I have a thing right here. There's lots of fantastic symbolism and stuff going on with these weird items. We might talk about that now or later if someone's interested. There's my guy. I just thought, let's make a nice looking normal dude since we don't have the Norwood of power, but still kind of crazy looking. I think I did okay. But yes, anyway, this kind of odd, not quite there, but very like lucid and effective in the sense of like he has a strange effect, and just the aesthetic experience of listening to people talk like this in this kind of way, it really... I'm sorry, this made a lot more sense when I was thinking out loud. The game almost just gets in the way. I should just podcast. Just kidding, I won't sync to that, at least not yet. What was I saying? Yes, these specific pieces of media which I think kind of did this well by accident are things like a lot of Italian genre movies I really like. Some I think were more aware of themselves than others, where they kind of, you know, willfully go into magic and abstraction and weirdness, and they often had these strange stretches of logic and things which kind of stretch your ability to buy what's going on, but then at the same time kind of don't, because they kind of just become dreams in a very odd way. I'm sorry, I might bring some like footage of trailers of his films up or something at this point so you can see what I'm talking about, but where things get more interesting, I think the filmmaker I enjoy more than Argento is Lucio Fulci, who maybe has a bit of a meme reputation for being, one, a guy who's got a lot of gore in a lot of his movies, and two, being this kind of hackish knockoff of Argento. Well, probably now it's almost swung the other way around, where he's like the contrarian pick of like, Argento, do you know Fulci? But I'm sorry, anyway, where I was going is that Fulci's movies are kind of like, they are, to a large extent, just pastiches of other popular films, including Argento's to a large extent. Let me just cut this in here. I think if you watch this, you'll get the relevance very soon.
You are Liza, aren't you?
Yes.
My name is Emily. I've been looking for you.
But whereas logic might kind of break down in an Argento film, like what is going on in the second half of Suspiria is that, well, it's kind of like the plot has magic going on in it, but like what specifically is happening in any given scene, who knows? It's all just very weird, isn't it? But so where I was going with that is that if you then watch something like Lucio Fulci's The Beyond or Conquest, things get very, very weird, to the point where, like, moment to moment, people have conversations like they're dreaming.
Meigs, who were those men? Who's their leader? Answer me. I want to know now. Who is this Okran? A man, a woman, a creature, what?
Listen to me. You just forget about her.
How can I? Innocent men, women, and children were slaughtered because of us.
Everybody dies sooner or later.
Don't you want to get revenge?
We already did.
In the sense, it's almost like something out of David Lynch, like Inland Empire, where nobody sounds quite right, and moment to moment what's going on Gee, that just occurred to me now that Inland Empire to Dark Souls could almost be another line of comparison, but I'm really stretching myself thin already.
A little boy went out to play. When he opened his door, he saw the world. As he passed through the doorway, he caused a reflection. Evil was born. Evil was born and followed the boy.
I'm sorry, what is that?
An old tale.
Conquest is really the comparison I want to make Lucio Fulci's film. I'll try to get some footage of it up here, and I really recommend that you watch that for an example of just a lot of fascinating things pop culture-wise happening at once in that film. But it's kind of a Dark Souls film in that it's got that film makes a very unique impression, and sort of like the acting in a lot of Japanese games. Like, in this Italian film, I'm really not sure the extent to which Fulci knows he's being weird and to what extent it's like, alright, screw it, we're just gonna do one take and then we're out of money, move on, or whatever. But the thing is, as I was just saying before, it really doesn't matter. I'm having a fascinating time either way. I'm really enthralled by this movie, and the same is true of a Japanese game like... Gee, my guy looks weird. And the same is true of a Japanese game like Dark Souls for one, but there are also far weirder games like the old From games like Kingsfield and Evergrace also had this kind of uncanny effect going on all along, and a detail that a few people have pointed out but I don't think there has been any serious consideration of is that the Erd tree is a central image and also idea and plot element in Elden Ring. The idea is that there is a giant tree. There's even a pretty big tree right here. In fact, let me get some footage to overlay of Evergrace now so you can see how they pay homage to themselves with how much the starting area in most of their games looks the same, and how that real consistent design, I believe, started with Evergrace. But Evergrace, what I wanted to say, I'm sorry I'm bouncing around, I'll get back to the other point. What I wanted to say about that is that there is also an Erd tree in Evergrace, but it doesn't really play into anything that's going on explicitly. You can see in the opening cutscene, which almost feels like it has nothing to do with the game, that it feels like it's very important there, but there is no elaboration, nobody says anything in this cutscene, there's no narration, it's just beautiful imagery. That's why we love Evergrace. It's beautiful, but the other interesting thing about Evergrace and its sequel, which also barely makes sense and has lots of people speaking in a weird dreamlike fashion in a strange half-empty corpse world where the logistics and just practical day-to-day questions of how anybody stays alive make absolutely no sense. Where I was going is, there is a novel of lore written for each Evergrace game, that's 2 of them, but all up between these 2 games there are probably like 30 lines of dialogue. These things are practically empty. Perhaps you can see why that's interesting to me now, in that what From have been doing for a very long time, I suspect they may even have been doing it before this, like the spooky music and the strange effect. We know they love Lovecraft by the time they're making Bloodborne, but I would not at all be surprised if they had Lovecraft on their minds even when they were making Kingsfield 1, because you can very clearly see it in the logic of writing an entire novel about your society and an Erd tree's relationship to it and so on, and then in your finished game there are like 20 lines of dialogue. That's very, very cool. From kind of make things by building up and then subtracting, where they're doing intentionally what Lucio Fulci may or may not have been doing intentionally, where, again, it's really the whole From experience. I've probably conveyed this in writing a lot better than I am in speech right now, where they really want you to feel like you're in the middle of something that doesn't quite make sense to you from this perspective, but somewhere out there is complete sense, and we have examples of them, of course, very explicitly in Evergrace, writing, basically overwriting, and then drawing back until only a fraction of it is visible to you. Why did they do that? Did they run out of money? Were they having a hard time making Evergrace? Maybe, but the effect is much more interesting, I think, than if they kept it in, and by Dark Souls, they are definitely doing it deliberately, and yeah, this is an interesting thing in art, this kind of uncanny, incomplete, vague feeling, and I'm sorry how this ties into the performances, which I was getting at so long ago. Gee, some of you, I hope you didn't click on this to watch me actually play Dark Souls. This is what video games are to me. I think about them and then I start doing this in my head, and it's more fun than playing them to me. Well, anyway, I'll try to edit in some footage so you aren't going complete of other things that I'm talking about, so you don't go completely insane listening to this. You poor people. Anyway, the voice acting in this game, it's got this strange, distant effect which I find quite entertaining, and it creates a very distinct feeling, and yeah, what I was thinking recently was, perhaps you've played Resident Evil 1, I don't mean the remake for the GameCube, the very original with the very strange lines and cheap synthesizer music and weird cutscenes happening, people reacting to things in ways that don't quite make sense.
I don't know what happened.
Barry! Where's Barry?
Well, I'm sorry, but he's probably...
No.
I read Shinji Mikami interviews, he's an interesting man, he doesn't just talk about owning watches. He also talks about very specific narrative and aesthetic inspirations, and one very explicit thing he mentions in the kind of creative genesis of Resident Evil is Lucio Fulci's film Zombie 2. Specifically, he says that he thinks Zombie 2, out of all of his films, is far too explicit and violent to be scary. It's just very extreme and in your face, but from that we can take two things. I generally think we should err on the side of figuring that artists are not saying everything that's on their minds. If he's seen one Fulci, we should probably figure he's seen more of them, and this is a specific inspiration he got from that one film that, oh, it's too on the nose, I want to do some more subtle kind of in-your-head horror. But was he perhaps watching his other films like Conquest and The Beyond, his more acclaimed ones, and perhaps was he appreciating the finer details of what's going on in those films? Where I'm going is, all the way along, was Shinji Mikami basically playing every English speaker for a fucking idiot? Did he know that the dialogue in Resident Evil sounded weird? Was he basically trying to create a strange effect for basically just weirding you out and putting you in this strange kind of, like, David Lynch nonsense horror? That's another thing that ties into what I was saying before with Inland Empire feeling like this. We know for a fact that, like, every Japanese person fucking loves David Lynch. Twin Peaks was, like, the biggest show ever over there. They absolutely adored it. And, of course, if you look not particularly closely, you can see that there are just Twin Peaks references out the eyeballs all through the first Resident Evil game. The whole place looks like... Okay, sorry if you've actually been enjoying this, but this is where the recording died. Thank you, Audacity, you stupid, stupid program. But where I was going is that the mansion in Resident Evil 1, a lot of it looks Masonic on one hand, and it looks like specific places in Twin Peaks on the other. The brothel One-Eyed Jacks in particular, I think I've even posted picture comparisons somewhere before. I can get some footage up of that quickly, but to round this out, if this video has turned out to be about anything, it's this kind of uncanny feeling which is, you know, just created by kind of leaving gaps in your presentation, to put it simply, insufficiently, but I am tired and I want to basically send you off quickly here. I had more thoughts on this, and if I make another video, I'll basically elaborate further. This was meant to be a hey, I'm not dead video, and remind myself of how to use DaVinci Resolve video, so basically we're back into it. There was going to be more talking, but basically just let me know if you're interested. If this video is a complete mess, just let me know. I'm just happy to be back up and doing something for you guys, so yeah, I'll just cut this here.